Good evening.
Everywhere I go on this island, it seems to me I find degeneracy.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes. See, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid.
We have a bargain.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
Do you feel the pain? Oh, it's the pain I can assure you will be exquisite.
Watch a few movies, take a few notes.
His entire work consists of violence, all the time, obsessed with the issue of violence. Mayhem, gouging out of eyes, autopsies on the stage.
Come. It is time to keep your appointment.
Good evening, all. Welcome to episode 179 of Double Feature Horror Show. Did I have to check? I did. Hello to everyone joining us in the chat and to all you fabulous people watching on the replay. We are starting a new phase tonight of UK horror. We finished classical folk horror. We delved in deep, and one of the things we got to in that arc was that it was, as so many things do, it was trying to sneakily address some of the concerns of the day, of the 1970s. And I figured an interesting follow-on would be something that did that for contemporary issues. How was horror handling things that are a little more current for the UK? Has it dared to? Has it done it in sort of an illusory way? That was the idea behind the UK horror arc. And I'm going to take a bold stab that most of you are familiar with UK as a concept. It's kind of a new thing. But just in case you aren't, we'll give you a little explanation. I've drafted in my regular loyal co-hosts, Murgoot and TCG. Hello, guys.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hey. Welcome back, TCG. Long time no see.
I know. Might I say, though, you don't look a day older than when I last saw you.
Cheers. Oh, great. You know what?
Mind you, I was watching one of your videos from about 2 years ago. So, I mean,
oh, were you?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Sorry, I'm still bitter over the rap battle.
Look, we'll take a loss hard. It's fine. It's fine. Dust yourself off. Go back to the store, get that baby oil, and you'll feel like a proper rapper, like Sean Coombs.
Nah, man. It was more rigged than the bloody boxing judges these days, you know?
Oof. We're also joined by someone who has a deep familiarity with the UK. I feel almost cruel bringing him on, but he is an absolute treat to have on. It is the finest coder at the Lotus Eaters. Very, very adept with all forms of coding and difficult coding-based analysis. That is why they call him Harry Hard R. Robinson, I assume. Harry, welcome back.
Brap. Good to be back. That was my little taste of Da UK for everybody. Hello, it's very nice to be back on. Thank you very much for having me on. With the hard R, I assume that you're referring to my goal to destroy naggers, correct?
Oh, I just thought it was a coding language R that you were so good at that you could do very difficult or hard problems in it. I just assumed that's where it came from.
My specialty skill is pattern recognition, although of course with something like that you have to be very, very careful with the kinds of patterns that you notice. But it's very good to be back on. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to discuss Harry Brown, which I've not actually watched before, and it was a bit of a treat, to be honest. It was nice and a nice tight thriller where there wasn't much time wasted, except for the fact that there was a bit too much time spent on a woman.
Yeah, I mean, the handling of her is interesting. This film, I feel, yo-yos between based and cringe. Maybe it's why I love it. You know, that's my own path. Harry, we'll get to a little bit of shilling in a second, but just before we go further, what the heck is the UK? Anyone who doesn't know.
The UK is the superstructure that has been imposed over what was once the mighty empire of Great Britain. It is a vassal state to the US, which is filled with a wide range of diverse ethnicities that all like to bring in an incredible variety of foods that we can all enjoy. The crime rates may be high, but the spices get even higher. So it might be worth it.
Excellent, excellent. That was a perfect description. For those of you who like a more sort of visual guide to this, I went to the golden source of all UK updates. That is the UK aesthetics account, Mytho UK. I advise you to all follow this. It's horribly depressing. But I was stuck for what is going to best exemplify the UK, to give you a visual description of what we're looking at before we enter the world of Harry Brown. And I decided this. Hopefully you can hear this. But
It's a sticky one, isn't it? What?
this is my favorite for a long time.
When you need to drop your delivery, but there's a drill music with the.
Would you?
I bet that geezer is regretting his decision to get off that dinghy.
Yeah. He's thinking, is it worth it to deliver a
She's just
Chick-fil-A?
waiting for the stabbing to begin.
Yeah.
He's like, how far do I need to stand back to avoid the blood splatter?
Can I finesse by with my kebab and get out just fine?
And what he's actually a witness to a criminal confession right there, because that's all the drill guys ever rap about.
That's so true. I kind of love that they've actually done the lighting though. Look at them. They got a rig and everything.
Is this the low bar? Is this the low bar that we're holding drill rappers to? They can set up. They can rig a red light.
I mean, to be fair, it does look like they put more effort into that video than I put into mine. That look, that freeze frame at the end.
Do we want it back? Do we want this guy's face back? Just, I think until they get him at the end, it's like this. Oh.
He's right there. He's just thinking like, oh, send them back, send them back.
Actually, Miami Virtue might be right. This could be a form of parliamentary debate going on in the UK these days.
Yeah, we'll be. This is what we're reduced to.
That I actually think it could be.
Patrick Batman.
In the next sort of like 50 years, 50 to 100 years, you're going to see the Prime Minister get up and start going, yeah, man, then I'll stab him in the chest. That's why he ain't coming at me with a contest.
Trying to get some bars in here while you still can, TCG.
While I still can.
I mean, if you think about it, the MPs are already basically decided by postcodes. You've already got postcode-based conflict.
Yeah.
Why not become drill rappers? I'm up
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, again, my last encounter with mini drill rappers has meant that I'm never going back to Brixton again. I keep bringing it up, but it really has to be said that when you see tiny drill rappers being led by an elder drill rapper, he was about 18. That's kind of as old as they tend to get, robbing an Indian corner shop, you're like, I don't need to come back here. I don't want to come back here.
It's a safe choice, to be fair. Patrick Batman has gone above and beyond and dropped £5 instantly before we've even finished our spiel, like an absolute champ. Well done. Well, super chats are working, but if anyone else wants to test them, do go ahead. You know what? Last time I did set a little goal, see how the stream goals worked. You funded my copy of Shaman of the Radical Right, The Life and Mind of Jonathan Bowden, a film analyst, as we all know. And I'm sure there will be some film reviews in here. Was that, Harry?
And he analysed some comic books as well.
Exactly, film and comic. I buy my Bowden stuff for the film analysis, obviously. Patrick Batman, kind of getting to the core of the issue here. Sending in £5 asking, would you say Harry Brown is the non-subversive version of Falling Down? And will you cover Falling Down one day? I like that you've instantly got that. Yes, falling down is in fact subversive. Good. As for whether Harry Brown is subversive or not, I am extremely torn. I think it's kind of all over the place. There are moments you would expect subversion that aren't there, but they sneak a few things in. I will point them out as we go, but maybe I'll take a quick what's the word? Quick vox pop from the panel. Starting with Murgoot, would you say this there's subversion in Harry Brown, or did you think it was a bit more straightforward?
I thought it was more straightforward just because he's a man at the end of his years. He's an old soldier. Sorry. Old Marine. Big difference. Don't ever mess with the old guy. He knows all the tricks. And he goes from an elderly pensioner who's put his life in the past, and then his past comes out. It's not so much subversive as it is don't screw with the old guy.
Okay, we got a vote for straightforward. Harry, how about yourself? Straight down the line? Few blue pills snuck in there?
I'd also say it's mostly straightforward. I will concur with Murgoot, although I'll frame it differently, which is that there is a feeling of boomer bait to this film. In the old man needs to teach these young whippersnappers how it's done, and he's not inexplicably, because he's a former Royal Marine, but so much more competent than the rest of them. So I thought that was just kind of funny. There's only 2 points of subversion that could be identified, and even then only if you squint, really. And I'll explain why. One is the girl boss character, but by the end of the film, her soft touch, new way of doing things is shown to be completely wrong, and she ends up getting saved by Harry Brown and almost murdered. And 2 is just the pure demographics of the gangs that he's fighting, which is that they are far more monotone than you would expect for a London gang, even in 2009. The only counter that I would have to that is that in my own experiences, you do still get gangs of chavs like this, perhaps not quite as violent. But in my years ago, I hung out with scum. We've all hung out with a little scum here and there.
You're hanging out with scum right now.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, TCG. I used to have some friends who lived on a road that was like the rough road in town because they couldn't afford to live anywhere else. And they were living in a flat above a flat owned by a guy who was basically the equivalent of the uncle character in this, the local drug kingpin distributor. So I would go around there sometimes, and we'd end up sitting around outside with some of the people who lived by there, who were all nice enough. But we were sat around one time, and some maybe 15-year-old white kid shows up on a bicycle, asks if we know where a particular person lives, what his address is. I'm not from the area, no idea. Some guy I'm sat with points him in the right direction, says, "Oh, it's that one over there, this number." He goes, "Oh, all right, cheers, fam." Cycles over, pulls a brick out of his pocket and throws the brick straight through the window, smashes it, and then cycles off. Later on, I'm having to tell the police what happened because he'd apparently been put up to it by this drug kingpin because the guys living down the road hadn't been paying their debts. So these kinds of people do exist. So I feel like this is almost a bit of a throwback to a more innocent view of London crime, where it was mainly being committed by actual Londoners and not new Ukadians. So I would say overall it's mostly straightforward.
All right. And TCG, how about your take?
Yeah,
blue
I'd say
pill,
it's more,
red pill, purple pilled?
I'd say it's more straightforward, and I kind of echo what Harry was saying. I think if you were watching this film with today's lenses on, you'd certainly look at it and think the representation of this movie was quite off. But you know, we're talking like a 15-year-old film. I feel like we were going through a bit of we were kind of going through a bit of a transitionary period when it came to London gangs, and I think it's more accurately represented in its in its portrayal now. Where, say, if this was a 2024 release, you might be looking at it and thinking, hang on a minute. The gangs and the crime that you hear about in London today might not be accurately portrayed in this film. But as I say, yeah, 16 years ago, you could make that you can make the argument that it was looking a little bit more accurate. But yeah,
pre Boris wave, we have to remember. But
yeah. I mean, obviously, we'd gone through 11 years of Blair at that point, so the doors were open, very much so. But yeah, even still, I don't think, because again, like Harry, to be fair, when I was younger, the sorts that you'd associate with, or the people that you kind of knew from that time, yeah, it wasn't like it was now. It was almost classic, if you will, if you could call it that.
Chav classic.
Although, like, to be
Not
fair,
the new
people talking about chav, like chav culture, but I mean, I'm old enough to have preceded that, and I grew up as a old school hoodie.
Well, hoodie's a term that's kind of dropped out.
No, hoodies were before chavs. Chavs were the evolutionary thing. It's like
you just sound like a hipster, chav.
No, dude, hoodies were before.
Did David Cameron try and hug you? Where did David Cameron touch you?
He touched me. He touched me right on the snout.
He gave you a little boop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just.
Well, there we go.
And he whispered in my ear, "Who's my little piggy?"
Oh no! This little piggy went to market.
Yeah.
This little piggy came to Westminster.
Yeah. This little piggy stayed over at 10 Downing Street.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a bit. I think I'm a lot younger than you, actually, TCG. So when I was growing up, you'd get the gangs, because I grew up on a nice estate that was right next to a council estate. So if I was walking into town, I'd have to pass through it, and there'd always be the gangs of roaming chavs, and it would always be. Because I was, long hair, heavy metal kid. I went through a phase of wearing spiked wristbands. Don't judge me.
Sorry.
I did too in the 80s.
Good man. So there's no photo evidence that I'm willing to share, but just take my word for it. And I would be walking around, and they were a bit of a pest, a bit of a nuisance. I'd walk on the other side of the road to them, and one of them, the short one, would always shout, "Oh, cut your hair, you big girl," and make out like he wanted to fight me. But then I'd pass him by, and he'd be on his own, and he wouldn't say a word. So they feel like a bit of a throwback, because I don't see those gangs of chavs about anymore. They kind of feel like you say, part of a transitionary era in the UK, where there was the gangs of white kids who wanted to emulate black culture. Now, of course, they would probably just convert to Islam.
Yeah.
I want to throw in here, actually, like, just from my own experience of London, like, London's demographics are already like very different to the country, even in 2009 when Harry Brown was made. But like 2 years later, we got the Tottenham riots, and I think you got a kind of interesting sight of who might be wrecking things around then, including the infamous guy stealing the basmati rice. Oh, never forget that man. He's my favorite chav of all time. But I will say, like, when I was in not the greatest area of London, I did see gangs, a group regularly, I should probably just call them a group, that is quite like the guys we see in the film. And they were just like annoyances, smoking weed, basically meaning that a couple of streets were off limits. You would not go past them at a certain point of the night. You just wouldn't chance it. But the serious lads, the ones that were actually killing people in my area, those were like exclusively Somali gangs. So it's like, you do have the two kinds in here. The film is not exactly unfair, but as we go on, I will make the case that they did they play a couple of sneaky tricks on you as we go on. So thank you. Oh, and the final part, just to address Patrick, thank you again for the super chat. Will I cover Falling Down one day? I could be tempted, but I think the trouble is it's been done very, very well. I'm a bit hesitant to say anything if I think it's already been done perfectly, if I don't have anything to say that would be novel.
Is there anything that you could say that hasn't been put best in the Black-pilled video?
Yeah, I mean, Black-pilled got it. I've seen chats on other channels that went quite deep with it. Because of that, I don't think I could add too much, and that's why. So yeah.
If you haven't watched it, watch the Black-pilled video that's on YouTube. So that's a really, really good breakdown of it.
Yeah, I mean, if Black-pilled does cover it, you don't want to go near. Oh, the Critical Drinker absolutely boomed it, I'm afraid. But
he did?
He just missed it. I mean, the guy isn't going to go near the spicy stuff. He's not equipped to, or he doesn't dare to.
Yeah, I like the Drinker, but when it comes to the deeper subversive aspects of films like Falling Down, he doesn't touch them.
Yeah, I mean, he did recently have a video where he was trying to mog on Netflix for having a film about the all-black female World War II squad that did the postal service. And he's like having a laugh at it and then said, but of course, I'm not going to do that accent, but, but of course, we should definitely tell diverse stories, and then goes out of his way to like really hand the Netflix narrative on a plate and then explicitly praise Soviet forces. I'm like, hold on.
What?
What
hold on.
Like, he praised the Soviet forces, the mass murderers and rapists.
Two groups of Soviet forces to single out as good people with stories to tell. Good people may be a bit far, but they were put alongside Allied forces.
I mean, that was my favorite part of World War II, when we allied with the genocidal Soviets.
Yeah, he singled out the Nachtichte, the Night Witches, which were a female bomber squadron, but it was other stuff as well. It's like,
we've already got a perfectly serviceable Sabaton song about them. I don't need any more.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, unfortunately, Critical Drinker is either not equipped to or to really cover that stuff. He's just got a limit. Bless him, nothing against the guy, except for the fact that he just runs a trailer in the background 4 times in a row for the visuals in the film. But he's like your boomer uncle, isn't he? He's got his limit.
I don't know.
You hit the buffer zone.
As an Xer, Falling Down hit a touchstone at the time. You could say that it was naive now, or maybe subversive. But in the Xer culture, Falling Down really hit a nerve. And you have to look at it from an American perspective to see a lot of the humor in it.
I still really enjoy the film as its own piece of art. But I think, having watched analyses like Black-pilled, it's difficult to separate what I can see. It's the same thing that happened when I was analyzing American History X a few years ago now, which I still think is actually an excellently made film. But there's a lot in that which is deceptively subversive, like putting what are essentially pretty standard and normal conservative talking points into the mouth of a neo-Nazi to smear them for people, and to try and put on this idea that if you question anything to do with the Rodney King narrative, which I went over in the video that I did on why the Rodney King narrative was a complete media smear job of the police, that you're a secret Nazi in disguise. And if you hear your granddad or uncle talking at the dinner table about, hey, I mean, the guy was resisting arrest, he'd been drunk and drug driving at 100 miles an hour through residential areas, what the hell were they supposed to do? That he's actually a secret neo-Nazi.
I don't know. That was actually pretty true to life how they argued. I argued a lot with American skins in the 80s and 90s, and they'd actually use standard conservative arguments to make their point and then gradually get more extreme as the conversation went on. They try and draw you in. They're a lot smarter than you think.
Well, it's more through the use of the medium. There's a reason that many people of my generation associate standard talking points from conservatives with that kind of extreme ideology. And it mainly comes through the media representation of that. It's very rare, even going back to the 90s, that you would find those kinds of talking points being spouted by a reasonable conservative. They only come from the mouths of people who are secret extremists.
In the media, yeah.
I would be very tempted to delve into this because I would say I really liked that analysis of American History X.
Thank you.
Very worth tracking down, and for a mere £5 a month.
Oh, you're doing the shilling for me. Thank you.
I was going to ask. I'll shill for you, and could you shill for me and do call people poor? Because I always love it when you call people poor.
It works as well. It works. I called people poor, and somebody sent in cash in an envelope, an entire month, an entire year's subscription, saying, "See," with a letter attached, basically saying, "See, I'm not poor. Give me a year's subscription." It works.
Did you write back saying no? Thanks for the cash.
I should have just pocketed the money right now.
Yeah.
No, like
As a
Mark
poor,
Corrigan,
I'm jealous.
like Mark Corrigan, I am an honourable man.
All right. Well, I'll just keep it.
Also, for that, to shill you as well, definitely subscribe to the website or the Lotus Eaters, if only because we have an excellent 5-part Stanley Kubrick series that we did with Proper Horror Show, and she may be coming in for another director series very soon.
Lips are sealed. All right, folks, just to quickly say, links to everyone are down in the description. And I feel I will move. I mean, there's so much grounds for discussion here. It's fantastic. I will give, for anyone who has not watched Harry Brown, which I think might be a lot of you, this film, it's not all that well known. Doesn't get talked about too much. Doesn't get covered. I couldn't find Owen Jones addressing it anywhere. I was really hoping to find Owen Jones.
But you know what he would say if he has watched it.
Yeah. I mean,
he wrote an entire book about it.
I couldn't find him naming it specifically. He does make a big fuss about Eden Lake, which is, of course, a film that Harry has been on to discuss. So you can look that up in the back catalogue. But that was one of the ones where they're accused of making stuff up, but also relying on reported stories.
Also, the two films share an actor.
They do it indeed. Jack O'Connell, by the way. Thank you very much, Adam Loves Horror, sending in $2. Much appreciated. Shill it up. We did the shill. We shilled. Perfect timing. Thanks again. Very much appreciated. I hope you managed to do the homework as well. Where is our big boy? Where is our big bad lad? Yes. Leaves a bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it?
Oh.
The portrayal of this stuff.
This was the funniest part in the whole film, actually.
Can I ask, before we go any further, just for anyone who hasn't seen Harry Brown, what on earth are we talking on? What's on the back of the DVD? What the heck happens in this film? Can someone give us about a 2-minute summary for roughly what happens in Harry Brown? And we'll break it down a bit further as we go. Everyone's staying quiet.
I'll do it fine.
Go for it, Harry.
All right. Time me. It shouldn't take very long.
All right.
I'm
timing you.
Okay. Harry Brown is living on a rundown estate in the middle of London that has a load of chavs on it who are a violent gang. His wife is in the hospital and then dies. He has a best friend who is then murdered by the gang because he's afraid of them and confronts them, and they stab him to death. He then decides to go on a revenge spree, which he is very successful at. Also, at the same time, there is a woman trying to be a girl boss who fails miserably, who almost gets murdered. But then he saves her life. The end.
Absolutely base.
That was less
also stars Minnie and Mark.
Yes.
That is not so chavvious, isn't it?
No.
Oh.
Oh, come
Oh,
on.
I
It
feel
looks
that
just like Mark.
this is very cruel to Mark. Right?
We love Mark.
I do love Mark. And I feel that this is a very unfair characterization.
If only Peter Hitchens knew who was really interviewing him.
Although this does make me wonder, what's Mark's singing voice like? Does he have a beautiful falsetto?
Well, I can tell. Well, he did rap once.
Oh, of course
He
he
did
rap.
indeed.
I don't care if he can rap. All right, rap is not a artistic expression of anything except the soul of the jungle. I am not of the jungle. I am of civilization, and I need to hear his lilting falsetto.
We'll try and arrange it.
And call you a pedo.
What?
I said I'm going to go Kendrick Lamar on you and call you a pedo.
What, on the grandest stage of them all on the Super
Yeah.
Bowl
Yeah,
halftime?
Mark is Andrade.
I still can't believe they gave him that stage
I
so that he
know.
could do that. That's exactly,
I
bring
know,
Creed
I
back.
know.
I'd rather Chad Kroger get up there singing about how a hero's going to save him than that. We need to bring back post grunge
Definitely.
mainstream rock.
Oh.
Absolutely. Look, if it was good enough for Spider-Man, it's good enough for us, right? So, okay. You covered it well. Yeah, it's Death Wish, kind of, on a really horrific council estate. It was shot on the Haygate estate before it was, most of it was shot on the
Demolished.
Haygate estate before that was demolished.
Oh, it was. Oh,
Um,
Jesus. I was
Oh, yeah.
joking.
God.
No, it actually was. They shot the tunnel elsewhere, but that's a real council estate. It really do be like that. And a lot of the interesting thing with this is it is displaying a kind of reality. It's ripped from the headlines. To give a bit of a spiel.
Can I before
Oh,
you do,
please,
can
go
I
ahead.
can I draw a comparison that you'll be very, very appreciative of then?
Oh yeah, rock on.
Is it a little bit like how Candyman features the estates where all of the black gangs are, where they were disturbed a number of times during filming by the black gangs misbehaving?
Yes, yes.
Cabrini Green, yes.
Cabrini Green
one
Estates.
Of the worst,
Yeah.
one of the worst in Chicago.
Yeah, they were also escorted with a police presence whilst filming on Haygate, very sensibly. But basically, there is a sort of how can I say? What we've got here in addressing a UK horror is there was a real issue, sort of from the late 2000s to mid 2010s, and then I feel like it's kind of dropped off. That dialogue dropped off, but for a few years, the chav issue was hot. For Americans, if you haven't picked up, that is our urban ute of the day. They are the hoodied teenagers in urban centres who are basically doing black street culture as best as an English person can. Their demographics have changed a bit with the Boris wave, but that's basically who we're talking about. You can see in the screenshot here, there is the urban patois that they have adapted. The potential for horror, because people were actually genuinely concerned about this, incidents were happening that were getting quite a lot of attention. When the public saw this, they were unnerved. We got the early straight-up horror version of Concern About Chavs in Eden Lake from 2008 by director James Watkins, who has done some great stuff, but also recently cucked it out big time with the very blue-pilled remake of Speak No Evil. Disappointing. And then, but that took the issue away from where we usually see chavs. It took them out of the real environment and it moved them to a more typical horror environment, put it in the countryside, right? That was a little bit of a, but it was otherwise a straight horror. We got other attempts that played it kind of straighter, but kept them in their normal, kept the chav in their natural environment. Gosh, that's unfortunate phrasing. That you,
it is council
disappeared.
housed and violent.
True. Was it so? Cherry Tree Lane, The Disappeared, Community, Tower Block, Heartless. There's a whole load of them that are a bit more straight.
Kid
There
old
is
hood had
one that was a contender to cover on here. I was torn, do we do this or do we do the other one, Attack the Block? Attack the Block is a sort of more on the sci-fi comedy end than
Was it
straight
produced
horror.
by Edgar Wright? It feels like it was, and it's got Nick Frost in it as well, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it's Joe Cornish directing, I
Boyega
believe,
as
but
well.
That
Edgar
was it,
Edgar
yeah.
Wright may have had a hand in it because he knows him. But that one was good fun, but very deeply subversive. I left that. Like, we might talk about that later, but
Yeah,
this
I
I
want to
find-
talk about that. I haven't rewatched it for this, but I've watched it once when I was a teenager, and even as a teenager, I was legitimately disgusted by the morality that it was trying to portray. Whereas this feels much more true to life. Again, to put a bit more of a personal spin on the whole chav thing, obviously I've already said that, you know, I saw that guy throw a brick through a window. An old friend of mine back in 2017. So this is kind of like the twilight era of the whole chav phenomenon, but they were still around in my hometown. He was just walking around near one of the rough roads where all the chavs would be. And he's kind of alternative. He's got tattoos, he's got lip piercings and such. And he noticed at one point there was a large gang of hoodied youths following him. And he kept looking over his shoulder. And I think him looking over his shoulder was signaling to them that it was getting to him. So they began actively harassing him until he started to try and, you know, walk faster, try and lose him going around corners. And eventually they actually started throwing bricks at him. So these people could be very, very dangerous because you throw a brick at someone, you hit them in the wrong place, they're dead. So he was very, very lucky. Eventually he just legged it. He just ran and he managed to get out of there. But these people could be a real menace.
Yeah, and definitely, like, there was an alley outside my flat, and just like at a certain time of night, you could not go there. You would hear stuff. You would not chance it. You know, we definitely had incidents. I need to just quickly acknowledge Adam Horror sent $2, revealing that Harry may not have heard the rap battle that TCG and I had. And all I can say is I hope he never does.
I'm very disappointed to learn that you've done some rapping, Chloe.
I had to unleash my lyrical genius.
I hope you were just reading some classical poetry, just very fast.
I did it Shatner style, yeah. That's how I did it.
Okay, it was spoken word then. That's different from rap.
Exactly. That's if that helps you sleep at night. Yeah, like this stuff is real, and I think that really shows the film knows what it's talking about. How can I say? We'll get back to Attack the Block because I think that's really important. But just to say, like, why this is here, why have I chosen this? I've chosen this because this was really real life, and the real life incidents really spooked people. They scared me. Like, I saw stuff that made me feel extremely unsafe. This was a real problem. The film depicts that with admirable frankness, like the whole attacking in a pack thing. Very real. But before the start of the movie, we get a couple of scenes filmed on mobile phones. That is straight out of the headlines. This was called the happy slapping phenomenon. You may largely forgotten now. Yeah. It's like kind of like the knockout game, you know, they would just like record violence on mobile phones. The start is a bit disconnected from the movie, but it's trying to set the tone for what was happening. And in doing so, the film, I think, unconsciously felt itself pulled towards horror. And so lots of Harry Brown, which is pitched in the trailers as a vigilante film, like Death Wish, ends up in horror. Like, this is the start of the film. This is just like the end shot of a found footage movie.
Yeah.
They all end with the camera dropping, right? Just like this.
Watching the kid on the motorbike running through the park and taking pot shots at the lady pushing the stroller and accidentally hitting the lady, dropping her, and then hightailing it out of the park just to get hit by a lorry, you know? That was pretty horrific.
Oh,
That
I'd
at the
forgotten
stage
it.
level.
Yeah, that to me kind of had Dawn of the Dead vibes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the opening sequence kind of
Oh,
energy.
good comparison.
I would in fact say that the whole film has a post-apocalyptic vibe to it. The atmosphere
Yeah.
feels like you're in a society that's completely collapsed. Even though there is police presence, they've mostly abandoned this estate to run its own affairs. And because of that, you get the feeling like Harry Brown is the sole civilized man left in a band of savages.
Mhm.
Yeah, very much so. That's a really
Especially
key
with
point,
the
actually.
urban decay that we see, where by the end of the film, most of the place is burned down, and even before you get to the final climax, a few of the flats that he goes into are already burned down. So it feels like a post-civilizational setting.
The setting almost reminded me of A Clockwork Orange and the council flats there. Just bleak concrete that's run down, and I just had that kind of vibe.
Well, there's a good reason you do, Murgoot. So I mean, that's a great comparison. So Clockwork Orange was shot in basically the same situation. They found a real life attempt to do a modern housing development that would be futuristic, meet everyone's needs, highly rational, and when they filled it with people, it turned to hell immediately. Kubrick did not need to do much. It was already a bleak thing. He just added a little bit of artwork to help add flavor, but otherwise, the place was already depressing as hell. And the Haygate estate is very much the same. I just need to say, Normie the Navvy reminded me of Cardiff on a Wednesday afternoon. You know, you've been to Splot, mate. You've definitely been to Splot, I can tell. Now, Harry, you've saved me some time because you've hit on one of my notes. Something that really struck me is the difference between this and a lot of vigilante revenge flicks is like usually they start off with things are in a happy state, and then something goes wrong. You know, the wife is killed, the children are killed. Oh no! And the good man, happy family man, is broken and needs to get revenge. In Harry Brown, no, we start off in the toilet.
Yeah, there's
it's been crap for years. I mean, is that just Britain? Is that just the British mindset?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's actually something that comes out in loads of British horror films and loads of British dramas and thrillers like this, which is an ending sense of bleakness that they all have. Because you can go back to the 60s and you're still getting British films which are bright and colourful, but by the time you get to the 70s, you start to get this almost not grindhouse, but you start to get this this sense seeping in that we're in a we're post peak society in Britain now. We're in the decline, and since the 70s, British films have leaned more and more into the bleak atmosphere of decline. And by the time you get to 2009 like this, I think it's perfectly reasonable for a film that's trying to reflect the times to say there are parts of society that have been completely abandoned. There are these estates where the kids are a law unto themselves. They're basically uncivilized savages, and the elder statesmen who should have been the ones to try to bring in the future and make it a worthwhile society have not necessarily abandoned their stations, but failed at it. And you get that with the fact that Harry has, when he's visiting his wife's grave after she dies, you see the one shot of the film that we get of his, his daughter's grave? I think she was about, she's about 13 years old, 1960 to 73. And so you get this feeling that the good men, like Harry, were unable to pass on the civilization that they inherited. So in fact, actually, I think there's almost a bit of counter the boomer bait that I mentioned earlier on, if you read a little bit deeper into it. He's an older gentleman who was unable to pass down through his own lineage the society, the civilization that he inherited. And the people that have been having children are scum. They are the spiteful mutants, and they are the ones inheriting society and dictating where it goes from this point onwards. And where they're taking it is utter hell. So I think British horror and British thrillers do lean into that sort of that sort of hopelessness, but it makes them stand out, and it makes them unique. It's not necessarily about returning to a place of comfort that we get to experience at the beginning of the film. It's trying to tame the wild that we already live in.
To that point, even your crime comedies leaned into the degraded and grungy side of things, unlike the US with crime capers, crime comedies. It's all glitz, adventure, and romance kind of thing. Even with bad endings, it tends to show more, not positive, but the richer side of life. Unless you look at some of the urban stuff, like Boys in the Hood and some of those films.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I'm inclined to say that Britain, sort of lacking a will to invest in films, tends to then, it's easier for us to do gritty and do small scale. And I think part of that means it's just our natural headspace as well.
Which is also, to me, what makes Attack the Block so... Perhaps I'm being a bit too harsh here, but makes it so kind of reprehensible.
Oh no, go into it. It's
portraying this degraded, abandoned, wild, uncivilized place in the brightest, most garish colors possible, with the most perfect display of diversity, trying to come together to save the world. Whereas when I was watching it, the only thing that was on my mind the entire time, because again, I have experience with chavs, I know the kinds of people these can be. I had no sympathy for them because the opening scene is them attempting to violently mug an innocent woman who's coming back, and then who's coming back home from I think it's her job that she's coming back from. She's just trying to get home. They mug her, and then the film carries on to try to make these characters sympathetic. It tries to make you think that, oh, there's a different side to their story. Oh, they get sad sometimes. Look, John Boyega's character, he doesn't even have a dad, which was probably the only honest part of the film. And I was watching it going, I have no sympathy for these people. I don't care what their story is. I don't care what their circumstances are. I don't care about the socio-economic factors. They still get to make a choice. And the choice that they have made is to terrorize the people around them and victimize them. And the fact that by the end of the film, it's expecting you to feel bad for them and feel bad for John Boyega. I felt sick to my stomach by the end of that film. Whereas this, Harry Brown, I found commendable in the fact that it does not try to make you sympathize with any of these characters. The closest that you get is the guy from Eden Lake, who is being sexually abused. But even then, within the context of the film, I think what it actually serves is not to make him more sympathetic, because he still goes along with the violence and the murder. He still tries to get Harry Brown killed. I think he gets exactly what he deserves. The fact that he's being sexually abused actually only serves to make him more pathetic and more unlikable in my eyes.
Poor guy ended up taking 2 loads to the face.
In quick succession as well.
Yeah.
I just want to double down on Attack the Block, actually, because, again, it's one of those things where it's so poisonous because it's a talented cast. It's a funny film. It's great directing. It's just also, oh my God, the messaging, which starts off with like, Jodie Whittaker, oh, you worried? What? You worried they're going to mug you? Oh, they did mug you, but trust me, bro. What? Can we get up the meme? 18 heartbreaking scenes that make you say, forget having laws and handbags and shit.
by the end
The
of the
idea
film,
is like
isn't
these
even...
are like the rough boys that okay, yeah, they did mug you, but trust me, when stuff goes down, when you get invaded by aliens, these guys have got you back. It's like no.
Yeah, by the
And
end of
then
the
it
film,
falls
Jodie
the pity
Whittaker
party
feels
story.
bad for them.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd just be like, no, please get murdered by the aliens.
Oh,
Get out.
by
I
the
don't want you in this world.
the first time the monster appears and kills one of them, I'm cheering for the monster.
100%.
I laughed my ass off throughout the whole
Faced
movie,
monsters.
and I was cheering for the monsters.
Murgoot watches Predator 2 and cheers for the Predator.
Hey, the Predator and Predator 2 had true honor. Give me a break.
Again, the Predators are portrayed as more civilized than the people they're murdering.
Yeah, sorry. Attack the Block, deeply, deeply subversive. We will ask, does Harry Brown pull the same maneuver? But before we do, commercial break. Adam Lazara has sent in another $2. Thank you very much. Harry Brown is Omar from The Wire, minus gay. There is a joke about his surname, which I cannot make in this context, but you can probably imagine it to help distinguish them. Thank you very much for $2. Very much appreciated.
I've not watched The Wire. Is that
Neither
bad?
have I.
It's
Neither have I.
excellent.
There are bits that made great, but it is also relentlessly honest from a guy who spent a year in the police and a year with drug addicts in the same neighborhood. So it is incredibly well informed.
I've heard it's very good. Eventually, I've got my little girl's toddling now, so I don't really get a chance to watch films or TV anymore.
Patrick Batman has sent in £5 and is asking, how does this compare to Dead Man's Shoes 2004 that's set in the Midlands? Dead Man's Shoes, one of the best horror films we have made in a long time. Great stuff. I need to rewatch it. I honestly haven't seen that in 20 years, but I loved it. Drugs turning people that aren't even in cities into inhuman scumbags. God, I think it's been too long. I can see why you're making the comparison. I think no, I haven't seen it well enough. I know this pulled some punches in a way that I felt Dead Man's Shoes didn't. But it's been too long for me to compare fairly. But I tell you what, I do want to watch it again. But with my own child, it's yes, film watching time is limited, alas. Thank you very much for the £5. Actually, anyone else have a take on that? Who's seen Dead Man's Shoes more recently than I have?
I haven't seen it, no.
I haven't seen it.
I'm sorry, we can't help Patrick Batman, but
I've also not seen it.
Great film.
Although my dad loves it.
Ooh, good taste.
My dad has taste that's all over the place. I think he just loves every film that he watches because he loves all of the best films and all of the worst films.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Some of the worst films are great. Everybody hated Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I consider it a classic.
What was it he really loved? He really, really, really adored R.I.P.D.
Oh, my God.
That one was fun, but the last time I saw it, I was drunk. So, hey.
My dad barely drinks. He's just in his 70s, so I don't know what's going on.
All right, I'm gonna throw the question out. So we're talking early on, is it subversive? Now, this is something that Attack the Block we've talked about. It's subverting. Harry Brown, I'm gonna say, flirted with subversion, and there is some subversion in here. I'll point it out for you. Let's do one where they didn't dodge it, okay? Like, we are presented with DCI girl boss here. Emily Mortimer doing a decent job. I kind of liked how the framing basically cut out her sidekick. It's like, yeah, he's not relevant. Don't worry about him. Like,
He'll
nice
die
framing.
very unceremoniously.
Yeah. Daniel Barber doing a great job saying, yeah, don't worry about him. Actually, good director. The director was mostly an adverts guy. And he did a short film. He did this. He did a Western in 2014, and then he seems to have dropped off the face of the earth. Terrible. Shame. I'd like to see more from him. Doesn't seem to have gone anywhere. Alas. So when she turned up, I'm sure we were all kind of thinking DCI girl boss solves the problem. But she doesn't solve the problem.
No, I didn't get why she looked like she was about to cry in every scene as well.
She's just got one of those faces.
She's like,
Well,
why?
when Hickok asks her why didn't she, he's
send the
put
uniforms.
up for the job in the fraud department, which is a big step up for her, why she didn't. And she told him, if you ask again, I'll report you to the supervisor. I was like, yeah, she's trying to girl boss it.
No, that was over his comment about no. Normally we send uniforms to do the.
Oh, that's right.
I think it's because she calls what's he calls it, a deathogram or something.
Deathogram, yeah.
That made me laugh.
It was quite funny. Like, this is a film with almost no jokes in it. There's only one major joke.
Yeah, and she reminds you of that because he tries to bring some levity to it. Oh, deathograms. Yeah, you call it a deathogram again, I'm going to report you to the superintendent. Oh, shut up.
She's there to kind of show, like, no, you've got to be compassionate. The police, they're forgetting these are real people, and there's too much politics in the police. And she tries to rein him in, like, when there's a hint that basically a great scene where she comes back to after his friend's been murdered, and Harry Brown tells, you'd have just told him to go to the police, who are bloody useless, as we know. And she's saying, and that would have been the right thing to do.
Yeah.
The film absolutely does not back her up on this. The film is categorical that
she's a complete failure.
Help. Yeah. When her only good thing that has actually achieves anything is when she calls snipers in to shoot someone, which is effectively saying, yeah, Harry's got it right, to be honest. We need to go Robert Heinlein Starship Troopers origin story here.
The film definitely comes down on the line of these people don't deserve to live, which I respect. I respect greatly. Yeah. On the comedy aspect, I found the only really funny scene in the whole film was when the gentleman in the car gets his head blown twice.
Oh, I thought you were going to say his friend's funeral, where you're like, it's like, oh, granddad, big thing, and they say, oh, the cars are actually going somewhere else. No one cares about him. I thought that was really funny.
I didn't see that as comedy at all. I saw that as just trying to reinforce how isolated.
I read it as a dark joke.
Yeah,
a really dark joke.
I mean, perhaps it went over my head, but I didn't see it as humor at all. But I'd say you are right that the girl bossing fails ultimately, but there is still one thing that the film gets in there as a girl boss thing, which is that she is the only member of the police paying attention to the case who figures out that it's Harry Brown acting as a vigilante, and all of the other male police officers are just a little bit too stupid and self-absorbed to be able to realize that she's cracked the case. That's the only thing that she gets one up on anybody over. But even then, by the end of the film, it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
Well, by the end of the film, just because of the way Hickok was acting and the supervisor, it was, yeah, even if she's right, this guy, Harry, is doing the Lord's work. You can tell by the end of the film, some of them have figured it out. Oh, no, it wasn't a vigilante. It was a gang war. You knew damn well they knew it was Harry.
John Garcia has highlighted a scene that I thought was really interesting. Yeah. I watched this. So I actually did my rewatch last night with Simon Roberts, friend of the show. And we were sort of analysing it, trying to get a take. And we talked about this particular scene John Goris is mentioning here, saying he likes a scene where her partner is expressing his defeatist attitude towards their law and order mission, saying he supports Harry Brown's expected vigilantism. And I think in that scene, like, her partner is set up like an a-hole, an uncaring failure. You've got the scene whenever they do the interviews, a lot of the time he's just sort of slumped or standing off in the back. He's useless. We're not meant to like her.
He's not even lit in that scene that you've got up on screen either. I didn't even notice him until you ran the mouse over him.
Yeah. So I think we're not meant to like this guy or respect him, but he's correct. I think the film did a slightly sly move of, as we talked about earlier, I'm going to give the opinion I don't want you to support to a character I've made you hate. But
again though, I think we all recognize that he's correct when he's like, well, listen, Harry Brown's actually killing them when they deserve to die. What are we doing? We're just going through procedure and bureaucracy. We're not actually doing anything to help the people who live there. He's correct there. And then she longhouses him into going with her. And what's the first thing that happens? He gets killed. Almost
while she was driving.
While she, ironically enough, was driving, gets him killed. And if she'd listened to him and they just hung back, I suppose Harry Brown might have died, actually, because she wouldn't have been able to call in the snipers. But still, she wouldn't have got her partner killed.
I mean, all correct. Again, the film may try and nudge you in a direction, but everything actually supports Harry Brown in this. I've highlighted this scene, by the way, because I thought I wanted to hear your guys' take on it. For me, I was just... this is the interview scene where you basically see, I don't know, institutional longhousing, maybe? Like, the suspects in the murder of Harry's friends are run through the interview process, and it's so wonderfully bureaucratized and pointless, and we see it's pointless. It's not going to achieve anything. No one takes it seriously, but it's the idea of a process has been applied. We've all done our jobs, you know?
Unironically, this is exactly what Peter Hitchens is talking about in his book, The Abolition of Liberty.
Yes.
The fact that the police have been completely long-housed and had their hands tied behind their back by the College of Policing, bureaucratizing everything, whereas he's reminiscing about the days when perhaps, yes, the police were a little bit more rough and tumble and a bit more offensive than they are now, but they got results and they actually got things done and people felt a lot safer, whereas now this whole system basically exists to defend the criminals in a way. Because you're right, what actually gets achieved here, she gets no answers and Plan B threatens to struggle cuddle her a few times.
That reminds me of the twin perspectives in Life on Mars.
Oh, go on.
Oh, yeah.
That's just one of those things where he comes from a time where it's over bureaucratized and then goes back to the 70s where it's very rough and tumble and his boss cuts corners to get the job done. And it's you get the same feeling.
But they get the job done.
Yes.
What Peter Hitchens brings up in Abolition of Liberty, which I thought was incredibly... I think it's my favorite book of his, to be honest, is he talks about police could differentiate who needed what treatment, basically. He really breaks the assumption that every criminal is going to respond like a 115 IQ graduate. You know, he really targets particularly philosopher Bertrand Russell, who experiences a brief bit of jail and is like, oh, it's horrific. There's no library. Of course they turn savage. It's like, Bertrand, the trick is they were savage before they got in. Bertrand, they can't read. You know, he's basically saying, look, the police will know some people will not respond to wholesome chungus restorative massage therapy to get them back on their feet. Some people will, but some of them
need to go falling down the stairs a couple times before the interview.
Precisely. And a sort of sophisticated, civilized society probably doesn't want to see how the sausage is made. Wink, wink, YouTube's terms and services, etc., etc. But there is a difference. There are people who will respond, and there are people who will not respond. There are people who you can talk out of it, and people who, if you are not going to ensure that they can never make any further tax contributions. The best off you can do is keep them locked away from society. And that's, the best you can do. And Hitchens is very bleak on this. This is before he decided that actually they were all on the reefer and that was the problem. Wait, hang on. The film starts off with them huffing it. This film is completely Hitchens build. I take it all back. Deeply
I can imagine Hitchens watching this film, imagining himself as Harry Brown, nodding along, going, yes, very good, yes.
Yeah. He knew it. Hitchens is doing the Leonardo DiCaprio point.
He was probably thinking to himself at the time this was filmed, well, there's obviously nothing I could do about this. We'll just have to vote Conservative to get out of this situation.
You're right, actually. He was probably just watching this film going, why hasn't he given up yet? Can't you see?
Can someone just shoot Hitchens onto Kane here? Can we?
Yeah.
I still love that little clip of him. It's over.
This scene, when they open the door, it's evident the guy is on heroin. I was expecting the lab not to be a grow house.
I know.
To be a cutting and separating lab, which kind of surprised me.
I think it might have just been like a more interesting visual, perhaps, for the director.
Yeah. All I could think of, man, my dad brain activated heavily when I saw him walking through this weed farm, and I just thought to myself, Jesus Christ, his electricity bill must be sky high.
Simon and I thought this was possibly a callback to his Marine days, or that like the idea it's like a forest. But...
Yeah, I mean, he was quite attracted to. Well, I mean, just slightly off topic, but Michael Caine was quite attracted to the story of this film because he was an ex. Well, he was a veteran, wasn't he? I think he served. Didn't he serve in the Korean War? Yeah,
yeah.
So he saw a lot of himself in Harry.
Yeah. Attached, I've got a note to ask a question, and we might as well ask it now because you've kind of raised it, TCG. We've got what Harry's sorry, what Michael Caine saw it. Oh, Patrick Batman. Why did I mod you? Deeply subversive. Oh god. All right.
That is a good question, though.
It is a very good question. Maybe we should answer that question before we get to your question.
I'm not going near that.
Harry Brown is a good man, so marry. Hitchens, I don't want to kill, so he's going to have to be a one-time only because you don't want to go back to that. Gordon Brown kill. Easy.
Yeah. That is a pretty solid one, actually. Yeah.
Simon and I were trying to work out who is this film for. Who is the audience for this? PCG, you hinted at one thing. Harry, you referenced boomer bait. I'd like a few, just like a little discussion on that. And TCG, if you'd like to lead us off on who is this movie for?
I feel like this film. I feel like this film is for people who can sort of see themselves through Harry Brown's eyes. People that remember a time where life on the estate wasn't quite like it is now. A time where, community cohesion was at a much higher level than it is now. I often talk to my kids about high trust society and just how things have changed over the years to the point where, you can't even like complete your shopping at Sainsbury's without having to like scan your receipt to confirm you'd actually made purchases. Like this sort of stuff was unheard of 15, 20 years ago. And the thing is, like, we're old enough to remember to literally remember the good times, as it were. Because I look around my hometown and I see just how far it's fallen since the late 90s, early 2000s. And so, yeah, I can really empathize with Harry. And I feel like this film really sort of touches the nerves of people who perhaps can resonate with that. Yeah, that's my take.
I know, I like that. How about working up? Harry, how about yourself? Whose viewpoint are we seeing? Who's the audience?
I think TCG is pretty correct with everything that he said. I would also just say there is definitely the boomer bait aspect of this as well, because my dad's a boomer. He loves this film. I think there is a little bit of the wish fulfillment. And to be fair, it's a wish fulfillment of the good boomer. The boomer who recognizes that the world around him has gone to pot, and that he has a responsibility to try to make things good for those around him. Obviously, Harry Brown himself goes through a little bit of a hero's journey. He has this bit where he refuses the call, and then fate puts him on track to get revenge. And he's somebody who still recognizes that he has a responsibility to the civilization around him. So it's not pure boomer, but it is for those boomers who wish they could do a bit more as well. And I respect that. That's an audience that needs to be catered for. And I would rather we have films like this rather than the saccharine, awful... What was that boomer film where it's a load of just like old boomers going on holiday to a hotel together, and they all just have a really lovely time going on holiday, spending their grandchildren's inheritance?
I know the one you mean.
What, the In-Betweeners? It's not the In-Betweeners.
Is it the second best Marigold Hotel?
Yes, the second best Marigold Hotel, where Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter and Bill Nye get to go to a hotel and just have a really tremendous time together, and that's the entire film.
I hear there are deleted scenes of their sobbing grandchildren going into a dodgy flat share.
I tell you, you've absolutely like nailed it there as well, Harry. Also, what I like about Harry Brown's character is in terms of there's nothing because obviously as you go through the film, like every sort of personal connection that he has is taken out of the film. Obviously, his wife dies, and then his best friend's killed. So there's nothing really tying him to that community anymore. And so for him carrying out the actions that he's carrying out, I don't think, don't to me just serve as sort of like a revenge story. But it's almost like it's him trying to bring justice to the wider community as well, the community as a whole. He just happens to have also been slighted by the things that have happened.
It's almost in that way a redemption story.
Yeah.
Because the big motif through most of the film is the underpass that's part of the estate. That's where a lot of the action goes down, where he confronts the chavs later on in the film. That's where John Bradley dies. And at the end of the film, he approaches the underpass unafraid, and you see it fade to black as he's walking towards the underpass. So it's almost showing that he has cleared the presence of evil from this place. He's redeemed the estate in the way that he can to keep it a bit safer.
Yeah.
Apologies. I saved a screen cap of it because I found that was really key as well. In a number of ways, it's like it's kind of like in a Freudian sense, this is the thing you have to go through, right? A tunnel is a thing you have to go through. It's a challenge, right?
It's the darkness where all of this is coming from, quite literally. It's like in this shot you've got on screen, it's pitch black. You can't see in it.
Yeah, he dares not confront it. He walks by it. He avoids it. It's repressed, right? But yes, towards the end, he can go through it. But also, it's kind of like when it fades into black, it's like, yeah, he's done his bit. He can die happy now. But there's great Freudian aspects to this. Just complete the panel though. Murgoot, do you have any different take on who the audience is?
Very little difference since I'm looking at it from an American's perspective. This is a good capper until John Wick comes out, of course. but I grew up with Dirty Harry, Death Wish, basically heavy crime areas, and it's revenge wish fulfillment, wanting to see the crime being dealt with and having to take matters into your own hand. It resonated with the boomers and the Xers when things got really bad in the US. I think you guys are hitting the point where New York was in the 70s and 80s, which
we have no roof Koreans.
Oh, that's LA in the 90s. We're not even going to mention that.
No, fair play.
It hits the same touch points, only 20, 30 years later than what we experienced here in the States. And it is a touchstone for the boomers and the Xers, and it kind of introduces the millennials to the same feeling through media.
The generation aspect is a really good one to focus on. Massive agreement. I mean, I don't think we're widely divided on this, to be honest. I think obviously it's interesting that we've got boomer protagonists, and I think that's really key. A few of the things that told me who this is for is it's your sort of, for me, it's the middle class concerned person a lot more than the person who's in the estate. I think it's more like the outsider for whom the dodginess of the estate that they've always known was there has just gotten a little too close to them. And I think that because of shots that feel very real, very relatable, of him watching through the window. And I'm like, oh God, I did that. I've been there. I've watched heroin deals outside my flat. That wasn't fun. Like there's all these shots of him just like looking out the window, just watching. It's like, yeah, you've done that. You've been a bit concerned. You've seen some scary stuff. You know, you've watched them. You've wondered what's going on. It's like, oh, you're getting a bit worried about this, aren't you? I think that's the audience. I saw the director saying that he wanted people in Hampstead code, sort of well-off liberals, to be able to enjoy it as well. And I think he was kind of intending to shock them a bit by not really pulling too many punches.
Funnily enough, I've actually...
He doesn't pull a few. But please, Harry, go on.
I was just going to say, I've seen this exact scene in my town that I live now, where there's a river and there's two underpasses that run under a bridge that goes over the river. I've seen this exact scene a few years ago when I was walking past, and there was a load of hoodies and chavs obviously doing a drug deal. But then as they were in the middle of it, a load of police cars all showed up at once and chased them out of the tunnels, and it was like an actual clown car. I did not know that tunnel could fit that many people. Like in a row, they all just came streaming out and ran for the hills and started splitting up. It was incredible to see. It was nice to see the police actually doing something.
My goodness.
But so what you're telling me as well, Chloe, is that the director kind of wanted to make this film for the woman who, if she walks past someone a little bit diverse in the middle of London, she might clutch her handbag a little bit closer than she normally would, but is still going to vote Lib Dem come the next election.
Gosh, I don't know about that. I think he wanted to... I think he pulls a few punches to not scare her off, the Hampstead woman. But he wants to try and get how scary it is. I mean, I've kind of hinted that at it all stream. Shall I just point out a few of the things that were a little bit sneaky?
Please do.
Just a little sneaky. Okay, all right. Let's go through a few of these. Really minor ones. Where is he? Where's the gobbler? There's a gobbler. So you may have noticed on the back of our how do I describe him? The rough uncle, or or is it the rough dad of our Jack
Uncle
O'Connell here?
Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy.
It's always the uncles, isn't it? So Jack O'Connell, who was the undefeated badass king of the chavs in Eden Lake, who was also basically, as a product of his dad being rough to him. He's got to nosh his uncle off there. The uncle, suspicious tattoo on the back of his head. You only see it for about 10 seconds, but it's just there to plant something in your head. Little bit sneaky. You've got the makeup of the gangs. As we kind of discussed, they may speak in an urban patois, but these boys are pretty darn pasty. Over the course of the revenge...
the one incredibly pale mixed kid who's thrown in there.
Yes, he is the only non-white person that Harry has to kill in his entire rampage. And as I sort of said at the start, there is a variety of gangs. The very serious ones that I was aware of were mono-ethnic, but the kind of lower level troublemakers would be kind of a mix-up. They're basically who's in the block, who's in the school. So it's not totally evil, but it's just noticeable that there's only one non-white person that Harry kills over the whole thing. And it's just, is it an accident? I don't know. How about when he visits his wife? Brilliant. Brilliant. You know, the NHS would not survive without. When there is an attack in the street we see early on, a really horrible attack where the gang go quite feral. Slightly different makeup of the gang here. The victim is a diverse chap, and his wife comes out to support him, to rescue him.
Can I preempt?
It's like
something?
every advert you've ever seen in the last 10 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
These are little things.
Well, you did say the guy did direct adverts.
Oh, yeah, true.
Of course, yeah.
Because I feel like I know where you're going with one of the next ones, because to be fair, now that you're pointing out, I did pick it up as it's going on. After the gang violence seems to mostly be solved, and you're hearing about how the people on the estate are going to be a little bit safer now, it is conspicuous the new people on the estate who are going to be so much more well-behaved that the film chooses to highlight. They're not of the same makeup as the gangs.
I don't actually have a screen cap of it, but yes, they take the grim, grotty filters off the footage to show what a nice, fresh new start it is. And it's like, now the estate's safe for an African man with 3 kids. All right. Fair enough, film. I see what you're up to. Interesting. And there was another one. Now, this might be a little more controversial. But when we get to our film's very darkly sexual version of Francis and Constantine in this memorable scene. Now, that might be a bit unfair because he does speak, but it was the haircut basically did make me think of Francis. And he hangs about in the background for most of the scene before he starts talking. So
where have I seen this chap before, by the way? He's very recognizable.
Oh, yes, he is. He's quite well known. He is Joe Gilgan, who was in Hollyoaks and Emmerdale and Skymax series Brassic, I believe.
Brassic. I've not watched Brassic, but anytime the missus puts Netflix up, it pops up straight away. It really wants me to watch Brassic. That's where I'll have seen his face.
It's quite the transformation to make him Noel Fielding.
He looks a little bit like Super Hands, like plus in this, you know?
Ultra Hands, maybe.
Ultra Hands. Yeah, Uber Hands.
Uber Hands, yeah. So there's like this scene, I mean, is amazing nightmare fuel. I found it really hard to watch. Like the hardcore filth in the background was a wonderful
girl
touch.
ODing on the couch.
Oh yeah, the footage of them having a go on her while she's unconscious, absolutely grim and grotty and nasty, is it?
Yeah,
very well done.
Taking the needle out of her arm, refilling it, and shooting it into his ankle was.
Oh yeah.
In an already grim film, this was the most grim scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was a really good scene because of that.
Oh yeah. I like that this film does not tend to shy away from how gross it is, but I am thinking there's a little bit of conspicuous casting here. Again, it's keeping it a bit safe when we're talking about a criminal group, you know, in urban centres who are trafficking unconscious women. I don't know if I'd go for Skinny Noel Fielding. I just don't know about that. It's keeping it nice and safe. Now,
But
I do
again,
enjoy that we got Sean Harris.
just
I
gonna
do
put-
love that we got Sean Harris doing an excellent job here.
just going to push back slightly on that.
Oh,
'cause
go ahead, go ahead.
I don't entirely disagree. But again, I would just point back to what I was saying earlier about when this film was made, and sort of what I suppose what you could what the makeup was of, you know, sort of like the gangs and so would it be more believable? Yeah, I'd probably say for 2009. I think it'd be a bit daft if they were doing it in 2024 or 25. If they were, you know, the mannerisms and all of that were of one group, but then they were, you know, portraying them as another. But I thought for the film, I thought these two were quite believable. You know,
I mean, the mannerisms. The blonde guy with the short hair, his twitchiness. I've known a couple of heroin addicts, and he had that down.
Yeah, I'd say this was the best scene in the whole film, personally.
Yeah.
And also, what's his name? The guy with the short hair, Sean Harris. Is that the actor?
Yeah, Sean Harris, excellent character actor.
If you've ever played it or watched a Let's Play, he reminded me of some of the psychos out of the first Outlast game.
okay.
I haven't played it, I'm afraid. So
Well, if they ever made an adaptation, he would do a very, very good job.
Yeah, but he did Riding the Dragon very well. Just he doesn't have any veins, so he's shooting it into his ankle. He's scratching. He's got open sores. He's got places where he's been cut open to save him. He's got knife wounds. He's got
nipple piercing.
Just he looks like a hardcore criminal heroin user. Just great acting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Sean Harris is your perfect character actor, one of the best of the day. We'll actually meet him again in this arc. He's the lead in Possum.
He was in Creep.
He was indeed, under a lot of makeup, but being amazing. Yeah, like just great character actor. Always puts effort in. I didn't cover this. It came in a while ago, but I was waiting for a chance to mention it. But just to thank Mr. Gently Benevolent for sending in $2 saying mandatory Harry is the best Spice Girl super chat. I was actually considering starting a little poll, but
well, thank you very much. There have been a number of polls conducted on Twitter after Connor announced that he was leaving that I won all of. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who likes me, I suppose.
Yeah. you like me.
You keep the voices at bay.
I mean, that, you know, if it's not deviating too much, I feel like Josh has been trying to get in your base territory. You know,
yeah, Josh is exceptionally based, but he's much more southern and polite about it than I am. My voice was forged in metal clubs where I was just yelling the entire time. It's why I can't turn it down.
We should, right, Chloe, I think we should get Harry and Josh on here to do a rap battle for the prestigious title.
It's the only way.
No, I will shred it. I will rip an incredible guitar solo, and he will sing us a lovely folk ditty. That's
we'll
how
do that.
that's going to go down.
I'm all for
if
that.
you can
We'll
get
do that.
Josh on at the same time as me, I'd actually really like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was going to try and see if I could wrangle you two in for one of the quizzes.
One of the quizzes.
Oh, what, the only correct quiz? Oh,
only
Jesus
correct,
Christ.
yes.
Yeah, just make sure that you've got like something to punch.
Oh, it's one of those quizzes.
Yeah.
They're obnoxious.
To be fair, we do occasionally on the Lads Hour show a pub quiz style thing now. And the first one that I was involved in, Samson, was so sneaky
it was evil.
Appropriately, Samson was very sneaky with some of the questions. Like he asked us, he asked us when Elizabeth became like Elizabeth the First or something, Queen Elizabeth, the first Queen Elizabeth, and we all just said, "Oh, I guess she was coronated. When would it be? This year in the 1500s?" And he's like, "No, actually, it's when Queen Elizabeth II was coronated."
That stuck in my head. That exact question stuck in my head. I was like, "Oh, that is evil."
That was the sneakiest thing he's ever done to us.
I mean, it's a similar level of frustrating. I mean, Murgoot, TCG, you've both done only correct. Is there a question that sticks in your mind as a good example for the quality?
One where I almost answered on the first question, but I just thought it was too easy. That had Wes in a rage. The YMCA question.
Yes.
I do like those questions where you have to like make the connections.
I think
I'm just trying to think.
It was the second one where Yiz was stuck. Yiz and Wes were stuck, and they'd got all the clues, and they're like, "Look, if you're," I won't do her voice. I can't do it, but she was saying, "Look, the answer's you got to think of something gay and retarded." And I'm sitting there knowing that the answer is that all the clues were homosexual euphemisms. Like it was a guy lifting his shirt, it was a fruit, it was a queen.
She's got your number.
She knows. She knows. Good times. So yes, I don't know. Well, I'll try and arrange it because I'd love you and Josh on.
But yeah,
listen. If you get Josh and I on at the same time, right? We've done boxing together before. It will end up with us just getting into a fight.
Oh, there you go. You can bring Josh to punch then.
Exactly.
Yeah, that'll get your frustrations out.
Because there's your jolly little pub quiz, and then there's quizzes that make you want to become a heroin addict.
Make you to draw it back to the film that we're supposed to be discussing.
Yeah,
make you want to become this guy.
These two are only correct veterans.
Look at what you've driven them to, Chloe.
They only did 3 episodes.
But yes, bring it back to Harry Brown. Go on then. I mean, this scene, I think there is quite a lot to say about it. Again, and just like it feels quite Taxi Driver. You know, it's his he's I mean, you used the term Harry earlier. He refused the call. He accidentally killed. He didn't want to do it, but he's been drawn
he
in.
accidentally stabbed that guy at the canal.
Yeah, it was accidental. Didn't mean to. All that good stuff.
His training kicked in, and he just grabbed his wrist and turned it around on him. And the realization when he got home with all the blood on his parka, and it's just dripping off the parka onto the floor.
I like that there's no scene of him being half traumatized by it and trying to wrap his head around what he's done. Now, the next scene that we see him in, he seems to be straight back to normal. Like, well, he deserved it.
Yeah. He's cautious about it.
But 3 sheets to the wind, and he realized his training had kicked in. The one thing that I had a problem with was when he took out the Sykes Forbearan knife, which I thought was SAS and SBS only. But he could just have it as a memento. He may have had a friend in the SAS that gave it to him. But that's just me being a military geek.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Simon noted exactly what brand of knife it was as well. So I felt very, very definite. I was going to say something about this scene is like, it does feel like the one scene where they allowed themselves to get more Death Wish, to be a bit more standard vigilante, to get a little bit Arnie, you know? Like, it's a one time he gets to be a bit triumphant and drop quite cut for the trailers, the old, you failed to maintain your weapon, son.
You failed to maintain your weapon. What is wrong with you?
You have to
Well,
keep
watching the
prodding.
guy smoking a pellet out of the, he opens the chamber and smokes it out of the barrel. It was an immediate Chekhov's gun, literally.
Yeah.
You just smoked a pellet out of the barrel and forgot to reload. You're dead.
It was the
got
one
to have a bit of fun with it, you know.
Oh yeah, it was the designated. The whole film is grim and gritty and bleak and dark. This was the cool scene. You're allowed one. Every British film is allowed one cool scene. All right.
Yeah. It's notable that it's very. Otherwise, it's very restrained. This is why I sort of had that question of who is this for? Because I think a younger audience would probably be bored out of their mind. They think he's gay. Why is he crying? Why isn't he killing? Etc. You know, it's taken its time. It's relentlessly grim. At this, you have a little bit of fun.
It even ends with an explosion. He gets to save the girl, and there's an explosion.
It's the last words he says to the guy that you should have called an ambulance for the girl.
Well, I was wondering how there
I was very confused why Michael
explosion.
Caine did that accent when he delivered that line.
I know. So was I, but I think he was just like Horrorshow said. He was just trying to channel his inner Arnie. It's not a boomer.
Terrible. Oh God. All right. Hang on. There he is.
Off my roof.
We've got details. We've got
Hey.
details here. Hello, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
So, just for anyone just listening, resident expert, friend of the show, Simon saying the Sykes Fairbairn would indicate he had commando training as a Royal Marine, which we know he was. Okay. So not limited to SAS. So there's something very relevant to that detail that he brought up. I mean, maybe this makes a film kind of based, or maybe it's a bit boomer bait. You know, back in my day, we had proper criminals sort of thing. There's constant comparisons to the IRA, which is, I thought, a little bit feisty. He even says, like, specifically, those guys were fighting for something.
Yeah.
I mean, very controversial, but I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, if you just put it on the face of it, you could argue, you make the argument that was the case, because I think the point of that wasn't just to sort of like trivialize or make a definitive statement about what was going on in Northern Ireland at the time, but it was just to point out the fact that for them there was a purpose for what they were doing, whereas over here there is no reason. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It is senseless, and it is well, like Harry called it, entertainment.
Just entertainment film. Yeah,
there's exactly. There's no like I say, there's no reason for it. It just
Well, it indicated just where he had his service. I mean, that would have put him in the late 60s, early 70s troubles. He knew what he was talking about and where he got his experience.
I think it's also understandable that when you're dealing with a particular group of people as your adversaries for so long, that you do gain a bit of an understanding of them and a bit of begrudging respect. Also, Patrick Batman in the comments has pointed out, in the end, it was an Irishman behind the whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that indeed a sort of earlier role for Liam Cunningham? Good to see him. There's so many Game of Thrones people in this. Now, I had that down as a slightly subversive point. Like not wanting, because I think the idea that this is just, how can I say? If the problem is just that you have a feral group, some imported, some homegrown, but you've got a group that are not acting rationally. They aren't doing anything beyond maybe fighting for turf and a postcode war, like our aforeseen drill gangs. That's an incredibly different problem and a much harder problem for our lady in Hampstead. Let's keep going with her. For our lady in Hampstead to deal with that. Whereas if you can say, actually, it's kind of capitalism. It's a little bit of organized crime in there, you know.
Well, this is
That's a bit
simple
easier
organized.
for her to handle.
Organized crime is far easier to handle than just the wild boys who are just doing whatever. And, well, I have experience dealing with skins and Crips and Latin Kings, and they're all very, very organized in how they do things. These guys are just rabble.
Yeah.
I take a Carlylean approach to solving all of this crime, no matter how you delineate it.
The film approves of the Carlylean approach.
Yes.
Like, demonstrably. I mean, I'm going to say that there is a really interesting point on this, though. Like a little sly bass note slipped in here. I don't know if, I mean, maybe I'm imagining it, but it's a big plot point that your Irish boy here is the uncle of Plan B, whatever his name is. I think Noah in the film. Noel. It's Noel.
Yeah, Noel.
Preparation.
Noel does not speak like an Irishman. I thought this was a really quite nice note that actually you come from a proud culture, but you're kind of, if you end up in London, if you end up in these places in the estates, your culture is going to get sludged down to the sort of homogenized patois.
Yes, it's not even a culture that's even really native to London because it's an import. Because whether or not the film portrays it as black gangs, the affected mannerisms, the language that they use is all affected like black gangs. It's almost like they've seen black gangster movies from America and they want to mimic it.
Black gangster movies and rap videos from the 90s. Just watching them, it's more the media portrayal rather than the actual gangs.
Yeah,
something about how this, like, the very, I mean, it might accuse me of sounding very leftist here, but something about the nature of the estate environment is just this shredder for your culture. Like, you will get overwhelmed here. You're not going to retain your culture in here. It's going to get sludged. It's going to get glooped and turned into this indistinct patois product. And I just thought that's an interesting thing that happened.
This riot scene, did anybody get the feeling that these guys, this was poorly shot just because
it's a low budget
the
British
rioters
film.
are weak. They aren't throwing past the police wall like most rioters would. They're throwing it in front of, not at or over. It's just, it's the only point where my suspension of disbelief kind of went out, because I've seen a couple of riots and no, they would have been aiming at the police wall or just over the first line of shields. And are these guys just weak, or it just kind of threw me off through this one.
TCG, take on that? Did this riot scene work for you? Do you think it looked a bit cheap, or how do you feel?
It kind of worked for me, but I just remember seeing this and thinking of Green Street. If any of you guys have seen that,
I like it. Elijah Wood as a football hooligan. Good times.
That's it. Yeah, it gave me that. It gave me that kind of energy, sort of like that hoodlum vibe.
Yeah, I like it. It's instinct. It's unplanned. It's definitely, you're seeing the limitations of the budget, but I think visually it worked quite well. If I'm going to be harsh, I'm going to start criticizing. I would say the end, in a way, felt a little bit like there were some just boxes to be ticked. Like, they had to show the riot. Like, that had to be in the movie. I felt there was a production meeting saying, you've got to get that in. Because it has to replicate what we've seen.
Monkey stomping on the car, which was just retarded.
Yeah. Some shots, basically, I think it's shots for the trailers, but it kind of just closes off and doesn't lead anywhere. Plot wise, it kind
it's
of
just
helps get
something
people to the
occupy.
finale.
It's something to occupy the rest of the police whilst our main characters are tracking down the actual culprits.
Yeah. And then when that thing is resolved, then you are given a bit of a, I mean, I will say kind of a boomer bait, kind of a Lady in Hampstead bait, bit of actually we can localize the problem down to this particular Irish pub owner. Look at him. If we can solve him, actually it'll all be fine. And I think the much darker Carlylean, Hitchensian reality, maybe even a little bit James Burnham Suicide of the West. The good thing about the colonies was you knew the enemies were outside the gates. Not that I would read books like that, but if you were to take that pill, like, you don't solve that estate by taking out one guy. Like, the problem of the film as we've been presented actually is the whole thing is infested. You got to break out the low orbit ion cannon, nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure, right? I feel like that's what the film showed us, and then the resolution of the finale does not quite connect to that, even if it does impressively say that Harry Brown did absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah, I feel like the most effective ending for the film would have been once he gets shot by the snipers, cut to credits.
Yeah.
I didn't need the postscript of the police letting you know that everything's fine now, and look, the diversity can finally live in peace in this estate now that they're not being terrorized by the white kids anymore. I liked the final shot of Harry Brown walking confidently towards the underpass, because I think that was a nice thematic finish for it. But I think in terms of the overall revenge plot, films like this, you need that short, snappy ending. You need that bit where it's like, the bad guys are dead now, and the rest of it can remain unresolved, because I think it's more true to the atmosphere and the story that the film had built up at that point. You can't resolve something like this so quickly.
I'm also just going to sort of add that I'm also just going to quickly add that I'm not entirely convinced that he would have solved the problem at the end of this film. I feel like there would be, because there is an element of organized crime in this film, albeit it's sort of there's like a higher echelon to it. So I feel like there would have been a bit of a power vacuum that would have been left open by the death of the Irish bar owner, and even even Uncle Jimmy as well. So I don't think it solves a wider problem, but it certainly resolves a problem from a personal level. You know, the people who wronged Lenny, or is it Len? Len,
yeah,
Len.
Les.
You know, the people who wronged his best friend. You know, he got justice for them. Yeah, John. Actually, yeah. Make Harry the new crime lord. Imagine
that's
that's
why
I was expecting Harry to die.
Yeah.
And it to fade to black. My ideal ending would have been Harry died, female cop gets her commendation, and Hickok gets the posthumous commendation, and you see her walking towards the tunnel. Just make it even darker. Just rubbing it in her nose that Harry did the right thing.
Murgoot, I really like that.
I like that.
I feel like thematically, the closure for me, whether or not Harry lives, is, I mean, you can ultra dark it, like Harry being prosecuted. Starmer saying justice must be done. But I feel like a
it would
really
be Starmer
good ending
at this time as well, wouldn't it?
It would. Yes. It would be fantastic if she has to come to the realization, you know, if she flips about and she's been caring and she's been trying to sympathize with the people, which, you know, she wasn't as like trying to just connect? How do I reach these kids? She wasn't really doing that all that much, but if she ends up abandoning her priors and saying, actually, no, we gotta get out the low orbit ion cannon, you know.
Yeah, next time they're standing in a line while they're rioting, we just open fire.
Yeah.
That was what I was shouting when they were rioting. I was like, shoot them! Just shoot them!
Sorry, Harry. I can't get the image out of my head now. Starmer sitting at his desk. You know, all the grooming gang
pushes them to the side.
Pushes them to one side. I can't be dealing with these right now. Did you not know there is a pensioner who's cleaning up the streets?
So you've got to hold your nose if you're doing a Starmer.
Yeah. Dad, what do I do?
My thoughts of
what tour do you
Starmer
recommend, Dad?
I have my thoughts on Starmer, and I can't say them on a YouTube channel.
I can only say mine amongst confidants.
Yeah, you got to wonder what he got from some of his defendants.
A nice suit.
Yeah, it just, that ending I think is a real problem. It feels like most of the film it's pointing you towards like a huge infestation, like basically a collapse level societal problem, and then in the last minute it hits you with the true villain, and it's just
what the hell is that?
Yes, Mick.
Jesus.
He's behind it all, to be sure. And it just feels like a little bit of a bait and switch. But otherwise, it's still I'm so sorry for that one, guys. That was the least bad one. Yeah. God, my Google search is going to be messed up now. It's a little bit of a bait and switch. It's a little bit of a it's a pull away from what we'd seen throughout the film. And while we're on it, actually, I'm sorry, I'm sort of working through my bullet points. This is going to be something that would usually be. God, we have to do it. Basically, we sort of touched on the typical bit of subversion that the films try on you. Attack the Block love to do it. Even my beloved Eden Lake did it to a bit. That actually, they're all a product of their environment, and that, you know, as exemplified by this scene where Jack O'Connell has to gobble his uncle off. And, you know, don't you feel a bit bad for him?
No.
This film
I
did
cheered
not
when he
do
died.
that, I think, as evidenced by the fact that he ended up in a scene straight from Hostel later, which I
it's great.
loved.
This in the scene where he's being chained by the neck by Harry Brown and led from the darkness into the tunnel. That's the other best scene.
It's actual horror. It's just horror.
Great. It's
I
awesome.
just love the bit where he gets the phone, doesn't he? He chucks the phone at him, and he turns around to the geezer. Mark his name. He's like, "Make it work."
but
All
no,
I think is get the gimp during that.
Yeah. But the fact that he's being abused doesn't serve to make him sympathetic. It's not like Attack the Block where it's going like, oh, and he's a good guy now. You go, oh, he's even more pathetic than I thought he was before. I can't wait for him to get his head blown off. And then it happens, and it's glorious. And and it's his own friend does it to him as well.
Delicious. Yeah. I love that they didn't pull they come from crap places. What do you want? Anyway, they're still scum. Moving on.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Lovely.
I think the film is not taking a hard and fast line on whether it's the environment or their nature that's doing it to them. It's saying, whatever the answer is, they're still scum.
Mm. Yeah.
They're a disease.
There's something that we would probably previously, I think, it's not something I worry about, but people would tend to write off as a bit of a leftist point. But as we know, folks, the woke are more correct than the mainstream. And that the film does lean a little bit in a Candyman style, in an Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978 style. It leans a little bit towards the idea, I think, that the environment is a bit of a causal factor. Where do we lean on that? Do you think they're saying this is always going to happen when you build this kind of situation?
For me, it was did the environment cause it or did they cause it? And my answer is yes. They made it worse the environment makes them worse and they make the environment worse, and it's just a downward spiral.
Yeah, I think denying that environment has a play in people's lives and behavior is obviously foolish. I don't think it can explain everything, and I think I'm more of a nature versus nurture kind of guy. But still, Murgoot's right. Whether or not they made the environment or the environment made them, I'd say likely they made the environment. It's become self-reinforcing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that nature-nurture argument, and there is a bit of a circular sort of logic behind it in terms of like how these environments are created and how they're maintained. But yeah, ultimately, it's it's the people who were there in those environments to change it for the better. I just think if we sort of touch upon what you were saying earlier on about sort of how like bogged down and bureaucratically restricted the police are these days, and as we as a society as well, the way the laws work in this country, we're heavily reliant on the police to do the protecting side or the preventing side, when all the police can do is a reactive service. So somebody said something on another video I was watching the other week, and it's really stuck with me since. But it's the police take minutes where seconds matter, and I feel like if people were more empowered to be able to take care of themselves and and almost like protect themselves and have that assurance that if you bash some twat's head in because they broke into your house and you knew that you could safely dispatch them without actually having to then potentially spend time in prison yourself, I feel like problems like this would be resolved relatively quickly. I genuinely do. And that's
Martin did nothing wrong.
That's yeah, exactly. And that's the problem. I think it's not just sort of what this environment is, but it's how it's been created, and it's basically through inaction that these sorts of creatures roam our streets these days.
Yeah, I like that. For a spin on it, I think like the architecture side of things as part of the environment is actually genuinely a walking thing, like people getting a bit crammed in, it outside in an unnatural environment where you don't really know who your neighbors are, like people could be coming and going anytime. And again, when you've got quite a variety in the people put in there, you can't have a high trust society. And we know like the environment is a nudge factor, and these are nudge factors that are designed to make a low trust, dangerous environment. But yeah, TCG, absolutely, the police response is a big thing. I always think of I think of the security guards in stores and how they can't do anything.
Yeah,
like they can just film you. Like I saw my local convenience store just getting blatantly robbed. 4 guys, one after the other, came in, filled sports bags with stuff from the meat fridge and left.
Yeah, it's
and
like what Harry
no one
said.
did anything. The security guard can't do anything. Once they've worked out that nothing happens, they go hog wild, and then you feel like an absolute mug.
Yeah,
don't you?
I mean, it's what Harry said. I mean, the way the laws are designed now, it protects the criminals. I mean, could you picture a time in your life prior to say I'd say just the last 4 years, where a shoplifter would walk into a shop and just brazenly nick stuff and walk out? Like back when I'd say less than 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, that the thought of that would be hilarious, because anyone walking into a shop to steal stuff would be going in like bloody secret squirrel, long mat coats, and just really trying to hide their activities. And nowadays you just see, I was down the shops the other week, actually, funnily enough, and I saw exactly that. These two people burst into a Morrison's and just raid it and just bail.
Yeah,
doing a California thing in Britain now.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I think
kinda.
I think there's a £200 limit. I think that they've.
See, when I was working a corner shop that got robbed when I was on staff, it was back in 2019. Oh, yeah, I've spoken about it on the podcast a few times. So there's this brand in Britain called Bargain Booze, and I was working one that was in this really sleepy little neighborhood opposite a primary school, kind of middle class. So I wasn't expecting anything. It was about to close up. Two blokes come in balaclavas with weapons. One's got like a hammer. The other one's literally got a board of wood with a nail sticking out of it. And they're like, open the safe, give us everything from the till. So I did. But then you see they didn't actually really have to do that, because a few years later, my missus is working a co-op in Swindon, and they just get robbed every single day. People walk in without wearing a trench coat or anything. They just go up and they take a load of chocolates or a load of stuff off the shelf and they walk out without paying for it. And not only does this happen every single day, it's the same people coming in and doing it every single day. And they say to the management, can we stop them? And the management says, no, they get a security guard in to stand at the door, who just stands at the door and watches them do it and doesn't actually do anything. They've got free reign to do it all day, every day.
Yeah.
The store I was thinking of is a co-op too, and I spoke to the staff and they said the exact same thing. They fill out a form and send it to head office.
Yeah.
Head office do nothing. They're just like, we'll play the financially it's not worth it. CPS won't do anything either, so they just don't bother. And it's like, how can I say? I'm trying to think of the way of describing it, but it feels kind of like a magic trick where you see how it works. It's sort of, you feel this huge deflation of like, there's no art to it. It just feels so tawdry. Like, we can just, I don't know how to say it, but it's like seeing behind the curtain. Like, you can just rob. Nothing happens. And you're like, wow. I know. That kind of breaks my brain a bit.
It's any wonder why those neighborhoods end up being incredibly low trust.
Exactly. Yeah, it just reminded me that the co-op where I live has been robbed about 3 or 4 times since I've been here. The bookings next door to it about 3 times. And I live in what would be considered like one of the nice areas in my place, in my town.
I'm so sorry to hear that, mate. If that's the nice area.
Well, yeah, I mean it is pretty low. It's a pretty low bar, but yeah, to be fair, it's a pretty low bar.
I'm told that. Well, the staff in the co-op told me that they know that they're the easiest target because they do the least to protect, and just it doesn't take long for groups to figure this out.
Well, I worked for a bank for nearly 9 years, and fortunately, I was never involved in I was never a victim of like a robbery. I know people who have been, but one of the branches that I would work at had fake rising screens. So it had like the display, like the panels. It looked like it had rising screens. We had the messaging that said, don't try, basically like don't try and rob us. These branches have rising screens. And we even had the buttons underneath the desks for it, but there was no rising screen. It was display.
Oh no.
It was just like it was a trick of the mind. Now I did also work in branches that did have them, and they were bloody good. But yeah, I always thought to myself, like, if I'm in this branch one day and someone pulls a gun at me, I can go for the buttons, but it ain't going to do nothing.
That's maybe like the perfect attitude, is just like it's all an illusion. The button does nothing. The security guard does nothing. The goggles, they do nothing. Like, the illusion's broken, guys.
Maverick, TCG almost said I was never involved in a robbery. I'd hope not. No, I wasn't. But fun fact: my severely autistic brother did try and rob us. Actually, saying that he came in while my home branch was being refurbished. He saw me and he was like, TCG. Obviously, he knows my real name, obviously. And I was like, oh, hey mate, you all right? And he's like, I'm going to rob the bank, and then he turned around and darted towards the ATMs, started like twisting on the dials, and I'm like, no, and his carers, who are like these like proper big black geezers, are like struggling to like pull him off of it, and he's just giggling away to himself as he's doing it.
Sounds like he had a wonderful time at least.
Oh, he loved it. He loves all that stuff. He loves the idea of being arrested and put in prison.
Well,
like I'm not even joking.
They do get their special interests. You know?
He ran away when he was. Well, I say ran away. He went on a little walk for about 12 hours when he was a kid, and we had the police out looking for him. And eventually, they found him about 3 miles away from our house. They put him in the back of a police car, drove him back home. My mum's in absolute tears, like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? And he's in the back of the police car, laughing his head off, going, Mum, I've been arrested. The police are going to throw away the key.
Didn't tell me he was a rude boy, TCG.
Oh, he would have got on well with all these hoodies, I'll tell you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we come to about 2 hours and we think we're gassing here, so I might move us towards a little roundup. I think we've done some good coverage of it, digging in, finding some slightly sly stuff in there, but overall finding quite a good film with some teeth to it. Not perfect. We've got some teeth, and I think just in summary, like the fact that they're sticking so close to reality, and how people were genuinely freaked out by this stuff that literally, like the characters, you could see out your window. That's why this film ends up just sort of expressing itself. Where is he? Like a horror. I mean, yes, it's a bit of a Hostel echo, but of course this ended up being a horror. Of course it did. Great stuff. I might ask us to move towards closing thoughts and scores. So if you guys think about how you'd like to round this off, your scores out of 12, and chat's already putting them in. Brilliant stuff, guys.
I already know.
By the way, I'll say if you're coming a bit late to the stream and you haven't done the like already, please do that. I know it's a bit cliche to say, but we are on YouTube. This channel's tiny. I go in a bit more in depth. I'm afraid I can't just. I'm not going to get another critical drinker jab in. It all helps. It all helps. Yeah, likes and comments very much appreciated. You know, when you're a tiny channel, it's all very much helpful to let the algorithm know that this is good stuff.
Do it. You don't even have
slightly
to spend
autistic stuff.
You broke losers in the chat don't even have to actually spend any money on it. It's free, so you've no reason not to do it.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, call them poorer again. Tell them, Harry, that you don't want no scrubs. If you could, call them a buster, even if they're hanging out the side of the best friend's ride. You know, you just go for that stuff.
I'm not going to use that kind of language. All I'll say is that if perhaps, and this is not a financial guarantee or financial advice, perhaps if you hit like and you subscribe to the website, perhaps some monetary fortune will come your way in the future.
Oh, it could totally happen.
It could. It doesn't necessarily, but you're poor, so who are you to question?
Excellent. All right. Well, as scores start rolling in, I'm seeing 10s already. I like it. I will go with the panel starting from TCG, if you're good.
I absolutely agree. This for me was an easy 10. I mean, Michael Caine, can't really go wrong there. It's a good story. I think it flows well. The plot proceeds, I think, at a nice steady pace. Surprisingly good acting from Plan B. Which, because I don't think I'd seen him act, or maybe I'd seen him act in one thing. I think it was in Adulthood. I think it was, but I certainly wasn't expecting him to play as prominent a role in this at all. Really, Yeah, it's a really sort of like down to earth, gritty sort of film. Aesthetically, kind of like your green streets, which I really liked. Yeah, I thought it was quite good. I do think that the lady cop in it was a bit annoying. She looked like she was going to cry at the end of every scene or during every scene, which was quite off-putting. And I do actually think they should have gone with Murgoot's ending. Really, I really do. I think that's quite solid. Completely body her and prove him right by dying to clean the streets and make it so she can walk under a nice clean underpass. 10 out of 12. Nice bloody burger.
Nice. I like it. I'm agreed. Scores are high. Scores are nice and high. How about you, Harry? I'm working up the panel as we go. Closing thoughts and scores.
I'll also give it a 10 out of 12 burgers. It was a nice lean patty with a slice of bacon on there as well. No fat on it at all, and a little squirt of mayonnaise to go with it. And yeah, I thought there were a few issues, but overall, very tight, very solid thriller. Didn't really waste any time. And the highlight scenes like this tunnel scene and the scene in the weed compound were excellently done. Michael Caine gave a great performance. Yeah, 10 out of 12.
Very nice. Very nice. We're getting more tens are rolling in, lads. Lovely. Very agreed. Murgoot, how about yourself?
I really liked it. It hit all the touchstones of some of my favorite revenge flicks. As I said, Dirty Harry, Death Wish, Falling Down. Grew up with them, loved them. Well acted by Michael Caine. Very, very sympathetic to him. I actually liked the fact that the female cop almost cried in every scene just because she was having her nose rubbed in it. She was annoying enough. I wanted to see her cry. That's about that, and the riot scene were the only faults that I really saw in this. I'm giving it a good solid 10 out of 12 with a little bit of ketchup, and yeah, 10 out of 12.
Not, oh gosh, borderline unanimous. All right. I mean, I don't think I can dissent from this. Why is it a 10 out of 12? Well, obviously, it can't be 12 out of 12. There's no Tony Todd. That is the rule. We can't apply the Toddifier. I'm ducking a whole burger. Not so much for the subversion, which is in there. We highlight it, but it's about the lowest level of subversion that you're going to get to make this film broadcastable. We'll remind you in the UK that actually that sort of political angle is considered when rating the film. So don't be too surprised. This is a film that went out of its way to really reflect how bad it can get. Shooting on a real estate, working with the people actually there, reflecting reality, showing grotty stuff, but not trying to use it in a, pull on the heartstrings, don't you feel sorry for them, go and sign up to the Guardian sort of way. Very impressive. This film is quite happy to say that some of them are just scum, to be honest, and sitting them through the interview process and getting them a social worker, parking them next to, where is he? Parking him next to the most uninterested lawyer that has ever been cast in a film. So irrelevant that he's kind of excluded from most of the shots in that scene. It's just, there's no point in being there. No point any of them being there. This is a film that is happy to show you gritty, grim, very disturbing reality. So the little bits that were done to, what's the phrase? Not scare the hose? Is that what they say around here? I can absolutely allow it. What I'm mostly concerned about is that little things don't quite gel in the finale. otherwise solid, backed by absolutely stellar performances. We may find Emily Mortimer's character, DCI girl boss, a bit annoying, but on the other hand, isn't she believable? Isn't she coming? She at no point, and I know we were all worried about it. I've seen this about 4 times now, so. But when I first watched it, we were all worried about the scene where she would take down that chav and show him what for. He would try something, and she would deck him with her amazing skills that are not at all affected by her being 30 kilograms lighter than him. Never happens. Wonderful. So for all those reasons, it's a solid 10. It's a solid 10. Tiny, almost no cheese at all, but nice beefy patties. Blood that I am sad to say on close inspection ketchup that appears to be digitally added. Unfortunately, it's 2009, guys. What are you going to do? And the aforementioned. Where is he? Where is he? I've given up. I was looking for the shot of mayonnaise as well. No, it's gone. There it is. There it is.
There he is. A nice little squirt.
Take out. You know, I will say that he's got a sharp eye. Simon did complain about the scene on the basis of they drive off in a car. Harry Brown's on foot. How does he follow him?
Oh, boo. Boo.
We'll leave it. We'll leave it. 10 burgers. 10 burgers. Solid film. A brave look at the chav horror, and a fantastic counterpoint to subversive trash like Attack the Block. Adam Lazarus sending in final $2 saying a revenge movie recommended. God bless us. Yes, wonderful. Is dark comedy the name of it? I'm a little confused, Adam. Is that the name of a revenge movie you like? Oh, or the revenge movie is God Bless Us, I think. Tell me if I've got that wrong. Sorry. Oh,
God
dear.
bless America.
Yeah, that is an explanation. It just took a long time.
We got it. Yeah. I mean, he's got emphysema. It
He's not
takes him a
getting
long
anywhere
time
quick.
to walk to there. Jack O'Connell would have to really have been working that. Anyway. So before we delve any deeper into degeneracy, we've got our closing thoughts and scores for Harry Brown. I will announce a horror homework for next week. I hadn't actually decided. Harry, you're our returning guest for this entire arc of UK horror. Would you like really depressing BBC nonsense, or would you like would you like to see how we handle boat migrants in horror?
Oh, I'm gonna have to go with. What a choice! I'm gonna have to go with the boat migrants.
Perfect. In that case, your horror homework for next week is His House from 2020. Watch former Doctor Who sell you out good and proper as we look at recent arrivals in the UK. That is His House from 2020.
Is it on Netflix?
It is on Netflix, yeah.
Oh, good.
I will say it's not as... I got very mad at it when I saw the blurb and the trailer, but it's actually not that bad. It's interesting. We will have a lot to say about it. I hope this doesn't give you flashbacks from the day job, Harry. This is the danger of doing UK issues.
Well, both choices were pretty traumatic for me there, so I went for the one that is... No, they're both awful. No, I can't justify this. No.
All right. I told you it would be a dark... It's a depressing arc, but, you know, we had a bit of fun tonight, so...
Yeah,
I'm
laughing about this, the sexually abused kid sucking some guy off. Yeah.
Well, you know.
And on that note...
Yes, on that note, indeed. All right. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, chat. And
thank you very much for having us, as always.
Yeah, it's a blast. I love this film. I've seen it about 4 times. It's great. Doesn't waste your time. Lean 100 minutes. All right.
I feel like his house is though.
Yeah, it's a tighter one. It's 90 minutes, but you will feel them. Anyway, I will leave you there. Folks, you've got your horror homework. It is His House from 2020. This has been our coverage of Harry Brown from 2009, and we will see you next Thursday. Thanks again. I hope you got a good Friday tomorrow and a nice weekend after that. Thanks, y'all. Cheers.
#Chill Gang.